morning, everyone. Welcome to the annual CRISJ Research Mentorship Conference. This conference is undoubtedly the most exciting aspect of the CRISJ mentoring program, and it's my great pleasure to kick off today's event, where we will witness the amazing contributions from both students and the faculty mentors that are guiding them. So today we have an exciting lineup of presentations that reflect the diversity and the depth of research that happens across all disciplines. Today, you'll see firsthand the incredible potential when students and faculty work hand in hand to explore questions that push boundaries and challenge the status quo and advance social justice. So, before we start, I want to take a moment to thank all of the faculty mentors who have dedicated their time, knowledge, and energy to supporting these student researchers. Your commitment to fostering the next generation of scholars is absolutely invaluable. And of course, a big thank you to all of our students. Your curiosity, dedication, and passion for discovery and social justice inspire us all. And so, with that, I'm excited to kick off again our first set of presentations. First, we're going to start with Mary Williams and Dr. Hania Malana, who will be presenting the research titled An Examination of Nutrition Amongst Underrepresented College Students Who Commute, Factors that Influence Food Choice Behavior. All right. Thank you. You can share your screen now.
Well, good morning. I am Mary Williams, and I'm a double major in kinesiology and nutrition with a minor in French. I worked with my faculty mentor, Dr. Milana, to present to you today our research titled An Examination of Nutrition Access Amongst Underrepresented College Students Who Commute, Factors that Influence Food Choice Behavior. To give a brief overview, I'll be discussing the background of this study, literature review, and the problem statement and why this is so important and how it applies to our underrepresented students on campus, a methodology, how Dr. Milana and I went about accomplishing this research, data and analysis, and a conclusion. So to give a brief review of keywords that will be mentioned throughout this presentation, food disparity. Food disparity is unequal access to healthy and affordable food. This is linked to various factors, including one's race, their ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and even geographic location. Food access is the ability of individuals to obtain adequate food for a healthy and active lifestyle. Food insecurity is the access by all households members at all times to enough food for an active, healthy lifestyle. Now, food security includes, at minimum, the ready availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods to assure, again, the active, healthy lifestyle. And note, it is all household members at all times being able to have this access. Food insecurity is the exact opposite. It has limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods. And going back to food security, it is being able to, again, with all members of the household, being able to access food at all times. It also goes back to not having to resort to emergency food supplies or what is termed as scavenging, such as stealing, for example. And these are factors that are seen in food insecurity. Food choice behavior is the process by which individuals decide what and how to acquire, prepare, distribute, and consume food. So, the overall scope of this study is identifying food disparities in the umbrella of those factors, such as food access, food insecurity, food security, and how those impact the food choice behavior of underrepresented college students who commute. This is how the USDA assesses food disparities. It is under the umbrella of food insecurity. So if individuals answer yes, or often true or sometimes true to these questions, this is how the USDA is able to identify food insecure individuals and households. For example, if someone identifies under the prompt, we worried whether our food would run out before we got money to buy more. We couldn't afford to eat balanced meals. And if in the last 12 months you did ever eat less than you felt you should because there wasn't enough money or food and you answered yes, this these are factors that identify individuals as food insecure. And no, losing weight because you weren't able to consume enough food because you didn't have the money or resources is also an aspect of this as well. So, to give a brief background of the literature discussed, aforementioned literature, it gives the premise of this research and it states how food access disparities impact low income communities. And there's many food deserts, meaning that individuals are not able to obtain healthy and fresh produce at all times. That's identified as a food desert, and these are seen in areas within the greater Sacramento area, such as Meadowview, Oak Park, Citrus Heights, Arden Arcade, and even Stockton. Research shows that 13.5 individ people in the US are food insecure, and of those insecurities, 16.9 are identified in the Latinx community as food insecure and 22% in Black communities. And we see that stores in low income areas are often under resourced and poorly stocked. For example, in this diagram right here, it shows how there's a direct link that dollar stores have in regards to food insecurity and how it impacts food disparities. And also, dollar stores are often planted in communities that are a food desert. So, meaning there aren't any fresh produce. And if you think about it, at Dollar Tree or Family Dollar, you don't really see much produce. It's generally boxed items or canned goods. That's a food desert, and dollar stores are often planted in low income communities to be a band aid to this severe food crisis. And we see how in this diagram, for example, individuals who identified as Black had the most revenue towards dollar stores. So there is a close link between how much individuals of different ethnicities are spending at a dollar stores and the fact that one, as we noted that Black communities, 22% are food insecure. And so they're spending a lot of their money at dollar stores, for example, because of that food insecurity and food desert that they are succumbed to. And these food disparities and these factors impact the overall food choice behavior of college students. So, the scope of this study is again identifying how the aforementioned vocabulary, such as disparities, food insecurity, and food access, affordability, and even transportation, influence the grocery shopping behaviors, such as food choice behaviors, in underrepresented college students who commute to the Sac State campus. The study is very relevant because 23% of college students experience food disparities and 40 to 50% in California alone. Sacramento County alone, for example, has approximately 43% of adults in low income households who face food insecurity. So, the overall research question that I wanted to identify in this research was what factors influence the food choice behavior of underrepresented college students who commute? My mentor and I did a methodology of qualitative methods. Fall 2025 consisted of research training and taking the courses through the CRISJ program. And then we had a qualitative study using purposive sampling. So, student A, I interviewed two individuals. Student A identified as a female Latinx, and student B was identified as a male, and he was from the Black African American community. Also, this was purposive sampling, so I intentionally wanted to seek nutrition majors, students who are nutrition majors. I did this to know healthy, but to show that there are healthy barriers to show that there are barriers that students face and how their knowledge of and background history of being able to know, for example, nutrition and food deserts, and how despite their knowing of how to obtain healthy food, there are still barriers that prevent them from being able to access this healthy food. So essentially, they want to do something, but they can't because their status, such as an underrepresented or low income student, defines their availability. Semi structured interviews consisted of approximately 10 questions. The overall theme of these questions was for me to access themes such as grocery shopping planning amongst the students, their store preferences and location, perceived store quality, so what they identify as a good store, good grocery store, and possible challenges pertaining to how they're able to access foods. There was also thematic analysis for me to interpret and analyze data to identify common things amongst these participants. This is a brief research timeline. Again, Fall 2025 consisted of learning research methods. Spring 2026, January, throughout these months, I was meeting with my mentor and we were able to finalize our research proposal. February consisted of IRB training and methodology. And also March, I recruited my participants and post spring break in April, I interviewed them and transcribed the data and results. So survey results, I asked students in addition to the 10 open-ended interview questions, I asked students to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 certain grocery stores, 5 meaning great quality and 1 showing poor quality. For this research and interview session, Target was excluded. Interviewees often showed body language and a hesitance towards answering what they thought about Target, and I want to even mention how it was a tough call to make considering recent policies and politics regarding Target and the boycotts. So that information is excluded from this study. Trader Joe's, on the other hand, had a rating of a 4.5, meaning pretty good quality on average. Students said how they enjoy their frozen meals to go and how they generally have all the produce that they need. Grocery Outlet received one of the lowest average ratings. Students said that they don't really think that's a grocery store one and that they have significantly worse quality. Walmart was a rating of a 2. A student mentioned they have self-checkout, which they identified as a positive, but they don't have Apple Pay and their parking is atrocious. So that's a matter of a theme of convenience. What's convenient for the consumer and the customer and why they choose to avoid certain grocery stores and how those decisions impact their food choice behavior. Safeway and Bel Air received a higher rating of an average of a 4 to 4.5 in regards to good quality. These are some key quotes mentioned by the interviewees. Some of the things that stuck out to me was sanitation, a thing with sanitation. A student I saw how there was a frog one time in the produce section. Again, low income areas, underrepresented students having underrepresented poor quality. So poor sanitation, identifying a frog in the produce section. A student mentioned how they think it's crazy how you can determine an area's level of income by the grocery store. He said, "We don't have a Whole Foods in Stockton." Again, in terms of location and identifying certain areas in income and showing, for example, the dollar stores. There's also a student mentioned how grocery stores that they shop at are in nicer areas. So again, location, a theme of location, saying that a Starbucks and a Dutch Bros is what defines a higher income area and a nicer area to shop. A student also mentioned in regards to convenience, having to wait 10 to 15 minutes for certain items that are locked up in the stores in low income areas and how that's an inconvenience to them to waiting for an associate to come help them unlock the door just so that they can show that they're not a criminal for example and get the groceries or items that they need. A student also identified how the cheaper grocery stores, such as Food for Less and Food Max that they mention, are usually located in a food desert and how they're in rougher areas and the parking is awful. Again, convenience, parking. So, identified themes where the students for themselves knew what defined a good grocery store, not only according to their experiences, but how this aligned with literature and defined it as well. For example, I didn't bring up literature surrounding dollar stores and how dollar stores are often located in food deserts. But a student, in addition to mentioning how they don't think Grocery Outlet is a real grocery store, they mentioned Family Dollar as well, which is under the scope of dollar stores. A theme that was identified was a student's approach to grocery shopping and preparation, such as students that meal prep versus don't meal prep, how often they go grocery shopping. The average was 1.5 they go grocery shopping every 1.5 weeks. And they also identified what defines a good grocery shopping experience. They mentioned how being able to go in and out and getting everything that you need, being in a good area, And also in regards to getting everything you need, is it going back it goes back to whether it's good quality and good quantity. So is the fresh produce actually fresh? Is it bruised? Is it old? Students mention how they often have to go to multiple grocery stores to complete their full list of grocery shopping. For example, they mentioned how they don't often get all of their dairy products, fresh produce, meat, canned goods, and box goods from the same store. One student mentioned how they might go to a cheaper grocery store in a better area, and how, for example, they may go to Costco to buy the items in bulk to last them a longer time. Convenience was also a key theme identified. Student B, for example, mentioned how, in regards to parking, Walmart is atrocious, and even Food for Lex and Food Max, which are located, as he identified, in food deserts. Accessibility was also a theme. Student A mentioned how items are locked up in certain areas and they're not able to access it. And the stores are essentially treating them as if they're the criminals and that they had to ask permission to buy certain produce, which is a basic human right. Sanitation was also a theme identified. Student A, for example, mentioned how there was a frog in the produce section. And these are all attributes of what a student's identified as a good grocery store location. For example, student B is saying that I know I'm in a good area. I know that I'm getting good produce in a good area when I see a Starbucks or a Dutch Bros, as opposed to a Food for Less and a Food Match, which are identified as bad area locations. Student A mentioned how they go to multiple grocery stores. Again, what identifies a good grocery store, being able to buy things in bulk items, being able to be in and out, getting everything that you needed. And the target population of grocery stores and underrepresentation, student A also mentioned low income and how items are locked up. They have less of an experience to go to certain grocery stores are less of an experience to go to and that they're not as nice and not as pleasant. And student B also mentioned what a cheaper grocery store looks like. Again, at Food for Less and even Food Max located in low income areas that are food deserts. So, overall, this research highlights the structural inequities in food availability and what our underrepresented college students are and not exempt, and that they are not exempt from food disparities. It impacts their food choice behavior and where and how they choose to shop. There were some limitations to this study. Again, it was purposive sampling and it was a small sample size. I had one male interviewee and one female interviewee. And again, this does not define the broader student population, but it does give us a sample and a baseline as to how food disparities impact food choice behavior. I also only interviewed nutrition students, and this was purposive sampling because I know that they had a little background knowledge and they were able to identify barriers and relate that to their own shopping experiences and what they noticed in their communities and the community in Sacramento area at large. Interventions for this study are to have more support for mobile markets, food co ops, and community gardens, to advocate for policies ensuring that equitable food distribution, such as not using a Dollar Tree or a dollar store as a band aid to the food crisis and food disparities that our communities face, and in particular, underrepresented college students who commute. I also think it's a good idea to have for with the Sac State Student One card to have discounts for grocery stores. I know with that one card in certain areas around the community, you have discounts at fast food areas such as the Chipotle on Howe Avenue, Nothing Bundt Cakes, and even Bento Box. You have discounts at fast foods, but it'll be great if those discounts can also be put towards Trader Joe's or Walmart, Target, or even areas that are more equitable and have a broad variety and quality and quantity for their customers to give not just underrepresented or represented college students um, availability to food access, but all community members in general. Meal vouchers would also be a great intervention for, if not just commuting students, students who identify as food insecure. Sac State can use the same USDA template on how to identify food insecurity, apply that to our students and give them meal vouchers, for example, in the campus dining halls. Even if they get one meal voucher, for example, it's a start and it's a great baseline to help bridge the gap and mend the food disparities and poor food access that our students and community are experiencing. And this study relates and expounds beyond underrepresented college students. Children experience food disparities, households, adults, elderly. There's often food disparities and unable to access what is a simple human right of fresh produce that comes from the earth, something that we should all be able to access, but don't because society defines it by low income, underrepresentation, socioeconomic factors, your race, and your ethnicity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Wow. Amazing presentation. Everyone, please help me thank Mary for that amazing presentation and her mentor, Dr. Hania Malana. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Amazing job. So our next, we will have a Q&A session after we hear two more presentations. Yes, I hear someone saying, bravo, bravo, Mary. Amazing job. All right, so our next presenter is Erica Scholes, who will be presenting a research titled U.S. Mexico Border Walls Expansion Increased Migrant Injury and Death. So please help me welcome Erica.
Hi, could you hear me okay?
Yes, yes,
Okay. Okay, great. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see the PowerPoint?
yes.
Okay, great. Let's see. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Scholes, and my research is about Trump's border wall height expansion and how it has affected migrant injury and death. I have completed this research with the help of faculty member Dr. Vanessa Guzman. So I want to examine how the border wall's 2018 height expansion under Trump from 10/18 feet to 30 feet has impacted migrant traumatic injury and death, leading to an international public health and humanitarian crisis. To examine this, I will be focusing on research data findings from San Diego pre and post wall expansion, where traumatic brain injuries rose from 0 to 4.2%. I will also examine increased healthcare costs that are associated with these traumatic injuries. So, I examined research on the impacts of border height expansion by healthcare professionals and in medical journals. I will discuss these findings through the research of anthropologists like Ieva Usonante and Jason De Leon, who center on how the border's militarization produces patterns of injuries and deaths that are routine but deliberate. I will study the findings from doctors in the medical profession, particularly Alexander Tenorio, who gathered research from his neurological residency at UC San Diego Health. I studied how Jasbir Puar theorizes injuries inflicted onto vulnerable populations, and I looked at these sources to inform my thinking on the border. This photo shows the border wall before and after the expansion. This photo of the wall is 18 feet, and the 30 feet has been drawn in with yellow lines. The hostile terrain and landscape on and around the US Mexico border is deliberately created as a means to punish those who do not have the required documents to cross. People injured and dying as a result of the border wall's expansion is a humanitarian crisis, despite how it is purposefully framed as natural consequences of the terrain and infrastructure. This is a shocking but heavily downplayed form of state violence that sterilizes migrant injury and death to absolve the U.S. of any responsibility. Border wall related injuries have become increasingly more common since the height was extended to 30 feet. Despite the border wall being an expanded form of prevention through deterrence, people are still migrating, which results in a spike in more traumatic injuries and deaths. This data depicts the amount of border falls, which increased alongside hospital admissions after the wall's expansion. More migrants have been falling from the wall at higher heights, leading to an increase in injury severity, mortality rates, and healthcare costs. A 2015 quote by Jason De Leon states, "If the estimate that between 92 and 98% of all unauthorized border crossers eventually get through is even remotely accurate, it makes you wonder what the billions of dollars spent annually on boundary security actually does." Both Jason De Leon and Yeva Usanante argue that a wall and border militarization injures and kills, but they do not stop migration. Transnational security and constructing physical borders has been a common sentiment since the Cold War. Unauthorized crossing was very common up until the 1990s when a 12-foot steel panel wall replaced the chain link fence. Prevention through deterrence became the centered strategy for curbing migration under Operation Gatekeeper. The steel panel border wall in Nogales was constructed in the mid 90s. This border wall infrastructure deployed the Army surplus of steel planks made for landing strips in the Vietnam War. It extended for 14 miles of fencing in San Diego. In total, 62 miles of the border wall were created using these landing mats. The migrant injuries, amputations, and fatalities caused by this material could have easily been predicted before the construction, because even during the Vietnam War, there were acknowledged errors about this material as it tore up the tires from the heavy aircraft. Firefighters familiar with treating these injuries believe that this material was purposefully placed in order to sever limbs of the migrants trying to cross. In comparison to the steel wall that caused gashes and limb amputations, Trump's 2018 wall was made with a slip texture so that migrants are more vulnerable to falling from even taller heights. Since 1994, prevention through deterrence has been the U.S.'s main strategy to bypass migration, where migrants were deterred from crossing in urban ports and pushed across through the desert. Crossing through the desert comes with many risks, such as dehydration, starvation, injury, and environmental and wildlife dangers. These not only pose risks to migrants on the move, but also to the migrants who pass away during their journey. The environment and harsh conditions work in favor of the U.S.'s lack of accountability by literally erasing bodies, artifacts, and history as a form of necroviolence. The harsh environment of the desert and border wall both contribute to a purposefully built, dangerous environment which injures and kills. Some xenophobic sentiments tend to say, well, they are crossing illegally, as if to justify these deaths and traumatic injuries. What these anti immigrant sentiments are missing is a deeper understanding of why they are crossing the border. No one wants to leave their home or their families, they have no other option. To address the root causes of migration across the US Mexico border means to look at the history of US intervention in Latin American countries. This reveals how the US played a part in political and socioeconomic corruption, civil wars, executions, kidnappings, and other forms of violence. The US's part in trying to dominate and occupy Latin American countries through violence has pushed tens of thousands of migrants to flee their home countries, addressing why there is a large Latinx presence in the US. Migrants from Mexico, Central, and South America know about the dangers of the wall, but they don't have any other alternative as they are fleeing violence and economic hardship. Trump's underlying reason to construct a wall represents his entrepreneurial and developmental skills, using a standing monument to national security. It does not actually stop migration, but it does injure and kill. To compare both policies, prevention through deterrence and the wall's expansion were both implemented as a form of deterrence, rather than looking to solve the root of the problem, which is connected to the US's history of intervention. Furthermore, both prevention through deterrence and the wall's expansion deem the migrant body as disposable, that it is their fault for migrating and dying from the harsh conditions set in place by the US. This notion is reflected in a quote by Jaspier Puar. Certain bodies are seen as the bearers of disability, responsible for the very fact of their disability because of markers of race, class, religion, and region. Although this data is not specific to mortality from border falls, This chart shows the change in overall mortality data collected throughout all 3 states, California, Arizona, and Texas, before and after the wall's construction. As seen in the data, Texas had 78 deaths pre-wall and 100 post-wall. California had 5 deaths pre-wall and 43 post-wall. Arizona had 115 deaths pre-wall and 293 post-wall. This means that California had the largest percent change of 760% increase in the mortality rate. When these migrants get caught trying to cross and get sent back, they cannot go home, so they cyclically try to cross back, which results in an increased risk of injury and death. The most dangerous and costly injuries sustained after the wall's expansion are spine injuries and traumatic brain injuries, with brain injuries being a repeating cause of death in fall patients. Intracranial injuries are often connected with spine injuries, especially within the context of the increased wall height and enduring a blunt force trauma. As you can see through the first data chart, the vertical midline represents when the border wall construction began. Spinal injuries increased after the wall's expansion. The number of spine injuries per month rose from 0.8 to 4.25. Similarly, the number of traumatic brain injuries also rose after the wall's extension, from 0 to 4.2%. Traumatic brain injuries are the most life-threatening types of injuries from the border wall. It was found that patients who suffered traumatic brain injuries had a mortality rate of 7.1% compared to 0.3% of all other border fall patients. Traumatic brain injuries and vascular injuries are the most devastating, to where a patient cannot speak or remember family, thus putting a generational and financial burden on whoever is taking care of the injured migrants. As seen in this traumatic brain injury data, the age pre-wall had an average of 33 years old and post-wall had an average of 31 years old, which means people are migrating younger. This may be a trend that we may continue to notice over time. This data shows patient characteristics and injury patterns of patients with and without intracranial injury. This shows that traumatic brain injury patients skewed male, Hispanic, and about 30 years old, and from those who had a traumatic brain injury, over half of them also had thoracic spine fractures. The wall not only perpetuates migrant injury and death, but it also has a growing cost and strain on healthcare systems. This table shows hospital costs with and without intracranial injury. The cost was about $244,000 with intracranial injury and $163,000 without intracranial injury. The cost with intracranial injury almost doubles the cost without, which drains hospitals of resources. Firefighters and doctors have an obligation to help migrants who are injured regardless of their immigration status or their financial means. However, this level of care does not include rehabilitation or follow-up visits, which severely affects their ability to heal properly and rehabilitate back into work and society. Many patients who suffered border-related injuries do not return for follow-up appointments. Tenorio found that only 16% of border fall patients who suffered a spinal injury had follow-up visits. Tenorio implores people to imagine if only 16% of the population went to follow-ups. It is not that far down the healing process to where complications can still happen. Doctors must ensure that the patient is healing and rehabilitating properly. Instead, the patients leave and the doctors don't really know what happens to them afterwards. Poverty and disability are inherently linked, where financial hardship operates as physical vulnerability onto the body, making it a debilitating and all-consuming issue for migrants and their caregivers. As Yeva Usinante's research explains, these injuries and deaths framed as consequences are far from accidents. It is a form of state violence. Digging deeper into the term accident requires understanding that this term infers that there is no known solution or that it is unavoidable, like a car accident. Border wall-related injuries and deaths are not accidents, but purposeful, as shown in the patterning spike of hospitalizations after the wall's expansion. The state that frames these alarming hospitalizations as accidents turns a blind eye to its direct involvement in keeping things the way they are and continually making them worse. The US Mexico border wall's 2018 expansion by Trump more so functions as a shrine to national security to alienate migrants rather than an actual form of deterrence and immigration control. The border wall does not stop migration, but it does injure and kill, sending a physical message to those who defy the warning to not pass. The U.S. has an ethical obligation to welcome asylum seekers and create better legal pathways for them to enter the country that do not result in them enduring traumatic injuries. A change towards safe, effective migration controls requires rethinking the physical border wall that many consider a racist monument. This is a humanitarian, economic, and public health crisis that repeats the same temporary solutions of deterrence while implementing border policies that increasingly worsen death, injury, and economic hardship. These wall related deaths and injuries are just one piece of a larger issue. Other consequences have come from the border wall's creation and expansion, which negatively affects humans, animals, the environment, and communities. Thank you so much to Dr. Vanessa Guzman for helping me gather and organize this research, as well as Dr. Elvia Ramirez, our program leader, and my peers who also helped me. And these are my sources. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Erica. Wow. Another amazing presentation. Thank you, Erica, as well as Dr. Vanessa Guzman and Dr. Maria Vargas for guiding your research. Thank you. So our next presentation is by Anita Kirk and Dr. Mary Brunig. The title of the presentation is Gardening for Mental Health. Can Dirty Hands Lead to Happiness? And by the way, we have 2 Q&A sessions scheduled in our agenda. We can have one until we can have it at 11:30 so that we can have enough time for our presenters. So, all right, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Anita Kirk. And this qualitative research that I've done, I had a focus group. And within that focus group, I conducted one-on-one interviews with everyone. We had lots of great conversations. I also read a lot of different case studies. And so today I have gardening for mental health and can dirty hands lead to happiness? So I was inspired by Martha Stewart. There's a documentary out on Netflix, and she says, quote, "If you want to be happy for a year, get married. If you want to be happy for 10 years, get a dog. And if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, grow a garden." End quote. Some of the keywords I used doing my looking up for my research was happiness, gardening, therapy, mental health, physical health, stress, sadness, depression, and anxiety. Mm. And so my question is garden associated with happiness? And the answer is yes, from all my resources. So according to research, recreational garden has been a positive mood booster and strongly linked to feelings of accomplishment and self-worth. And evidence also suggests that engaging in gardening, physical activities, not only boost immunity, but also lowers inflammation in the physical body and can also increase levels of growth neurotrophic factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factors. And all those that is a protein that is about it's biologically active in the body, and it starts when we are developed as a fetus. And it's important for sensory. It's important for memory and all of our nerves and stuff like that. And it's very important too, because as we get older, it starts to go away. And this picture on the left is Chris from Three Sisters Gardens, and she was one of the individuals that I interviewed. And here she is with a nice big old beet. And this is Danielle. She was also someone that I interviewed. And the contribution of gardening and horticulture activities serves not only as a positive physical activity, but also serves as a helpful approach to combat stress, relieve anxiety, and it helps with encompassing life satisfaction. So during my case, while I was researching in my case studies, I came across two sensitive groups that can greatly benefit from gardening activities. And one of them was senior citizens, anyone over 65 years old. So, gentle gardening for senior care can be very beneficial because aging can be one of the toughest trials of life. As we age, health issues can be more prevalent, such as cardiovascular disease, fragile limbs, kidney disease, high blood pressure, and a weak immune system are only a few ailments associated with the aging of the physical body. And, we see our bodies wrinkling up pretty much, and, we're so used to seeing ourselves young. um, Mental wellness can also suffer. Loneliness, Alzheimer's disease, and early dementia are also negative impacts of aging. And some of the benefits from gentle gardening for senior citizens are social interactions, light physical movement, horticultural therapy, and cognitive stimulation. And it reduces stress and promotes relaxation. The second sensitive group is urbanized communities. And so usually in urbanized communities, we're lucky in Sacramento here because there's a lot of trees here. A lot of different urbanized communities and legacy cities, such as, you know, Detroit, Michigan, or Chicago, Illinois, or Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, they don't have the luxury of having tree equity like we do in here in Sacramento. Financially disadvantaged communities are more vulnerable to mental health issues and behavioral issues such as depression, anxiety, and substance abuse compared to affluent communities. Individuals of color are most likely to live in low income communities, and gardening can promote psychological well being, which is important in urbanized areas where disconnection from nature might have a negative impact on mental wellness. With a lack of tree equity and crime, um, and the abundance of concrete, such as roads and blighted structures and buildings and sidewalks, they have all been proven to be drawbacks in urbanized or low income communities. Mm. Green spaces serve as a great therapeutic approach in urbanized community. And here, this is Three Sisters Gardens. Therapeutic community garden as a specific type of green social prescription, which is focused on using green space and gardening activities to help young adults improve mental health, build social skills, and develop confidence living in urbanized communities can help them have, can make them feel better. And a lot of the young people are and living in low income communities are at risk for substance abuse. Community garden programs in neighborhoods that provide increased access to green space activities are unique in that they help contribute to the development of social capital and providing residents with greater opportunities to communicate directly with each other and to participate in transformative programs that effect positive change and growth such as increased health and nutrition. And right here is Three Sisters Garden, and Three Sisters Garden is in a food desert. It's in a food insecure area. And so these youngsters here, what they do, they are actually they are planting, they're harvesting, they are distributing food to individuals in these low income communities. And it gives them a sense of purpose, it gives them a sense of self-worth, and they love coming to the garden. When I was talking to a lot of these individuals in this group, a lot of them come from backgrounds that are very sad. A lot of them do suffer from depression. A lot of them do suffer from certain behavioral issues, such as getting incarcerated. Um, a lot of them don't even have social skills, but with the garden here and having these green spaces, a lot of these individuals can build social networks and relieve their depression and their anxiety that way. And it gives them something to believe in. And here's a fellow. This is the founder of Three Sisters Gardens. This is Alfred Melbourne, and he has lots of programs, youth programs, and he also pays these individuals to come and help him make these green spaces in these urbanized gardens possible. So he is always planting seeds and growing ideas. This garden right here is right so all his gardens is in West Sacramento or Broderick, California. So this garden right here, this is River City Garden. This is my favorite garden to go to. It's right up on the levee. And if you walk up on the levee, you'll see the confluence, which is the Sacramento River and the American River when they come together. So this one is really pretty cool. This one is a very special one because this is low the housing behind it is low income housing behind it, and across the street's an elementary school. So you can even have the babies, elementary school children, they come out and he'll have them do an activity where they're picking vegetables and taking them home, and he has little different activities for them to do. Okay. And so you don't have to have a house to have a garden. You can garden right in your home. You can have a porch and back patio garden. It can make you feel better. So if you can't get out and go to a green space and you don't have a front yard, just get you some plants and just put them on your front porch. That's all you got to do. It could be anything you want. This is my setup in the front. I live in an apartment. I live in an urbanized area. I live in Del Paso Heights. So with me, I do well with succulents. Succulents, they're very low maintenance. You don't have to do too much with them. This around. This is back patios right here. So it doesn't take much to garden, and it does make you in my personal from my personal experience, I feel so much better when I get to replant my plants in different pots and watching them grow. I have a cactus that I've had for 10 years, and it finally bloomed flowers after 10 years. You can do indoor gardening, right? You can have a household gardening, just have you a whole bunch of plants, have a great setup, and it can make you feel better. And when you have plants inside your home, it's amazing how much plants can contribute to the well-being and the happiness of just coming home from a long day of whatever type of day you had. And there they are, these beautiful plants. They're in here just lighting up the whole your whole apartment or your whole house or whatever you wanna have. Could be a mobile home, a tiny home, whatever it might be. What else do I have? And that's it. I know this was like a really short presentation. I want to say thank you to everyone who participated and supported this qualitative CRISJ study on the positive effects of gardening on mental health. Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. Thank you, Dr. B, for being my mentor and being available and just being super cool and all that jazz. And a very special thank you to Three Sisters Gardens for allowing me to be part of your team and allow me to come out and garden and allow me to talk to you guys and creating great friendships. And that's all I have for you folks today. And I'm proud of everyone here and whoever's graduating. Congratulations. And hey, man, the possibilities are unlimited. Take care.
Thank you, Anita. Amazing, wonderful presentation. Another powerful, moving
Thank you.
presentation. So we have, let's see, we have 6 minutes till 11 o'clock. We can do a short, brief Q&A session, or we can take a break and resume at 11 a.m. Any questions or comments for our presenters? We can always continue, by the way, the Q&A session at the end of the conference. In the meantime, any questions, comments, thoughts to share with our amazing presenters? This is beautiful. Amazing. All right, so I see a hand from Christopher Nunez.
Well, I just want to say that everyone did so good. I really love the presentations. I know some of these students, in the beginning of the semester or last semester, sorry, we were in class together. So seeing the presentations and the projects develop is really cool. But I did want to give like a special shout out to like Mary. Your presentation was just so awesome. a lot of what you were talking about is things that we're learning in my or I learned in my of health class, and all of everything you were talking about. A lot of people, want to discredit and say it's not a race issue, but it really is. You talked about how in more lower income communities you find food deserts, you find lower grocery stores, like a grocery outlet and whatnot. And I know you mentioned a little bit about fast food places, but sometimes there isn't even fast food places. It's just, I'm sorry, grocery stores. It's just fast food places, instead of seeing like a Whole Foods or like a Trader Joe's, it's just like McDonald's, Burger King's, Panda Express, like these fast food places. So even just access to grocery stores was such a big thing. So you just did so great. And while you were talking, I was just so like in awe, like wow. And it seems like you did a lot of research. Even just 2 interviews is a lot. I mean, I only did 1, so that's great. Just super good. Everyone did great, but I just want to give a shout out to you that I loved your present.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. All right.
Ma-
Yes.
Mary, can you hop back on camera for a second? Yeah, also I wrote Elvia separately and just said I'm just in awe of these presentations and all three of you just did such an amazing job. Have you thought at all about food sovereignty in addition to food security? And do you know what the difference is? And it's okay if you don't.
Most definitely. That did come up in my research, but I
Yep.
wanted to focus more so on the direct impact and literature regarding the food disparities and more so what's under the umbrella, such as the food access and food insecurity.
Great. Thanks. Just wanted to make sure that that was something that you were factoring in as well.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for our presenters? Yes, Manuel.
Everyone. Uh, Amazing presentations. I really connected to each of the presentations that I heard. Um, just accessing food as a student, first generation. I grew up in Stockton. I grew up in a what is it, food desert, and I grew up also working, not working, accompanying my parents to a community garden that really helped us get by. And so the border has always been something that has impacted me because even within our community spaces, there's borders based on race, class, gender, nationality, legality, and so I just want to thank you for for sharing this deep knowledge and your passions, your hearts, and the mentors. Thank you. I was the first generation mentee, and I wasn't thinking of going to graduate school. Just by accident, I got connected to a faculty, and it was just transformational. So I'm really, really happy that there's this CRISJ program that is helping connect amazing students with amazing transformational faculty. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. And Chris, I still see your hand raised. Do you have another question or comment for us, or is that okay?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I had to lower it. Thank you.
All right. So, any other questions or comments for our first 3 presenters, all of whom absolutely amazing. By the way, I hope all of you consider submitting your work for review, publication. We can talk about it. um, any other questions or comments for our 3 speakers? If not, we can take a short 1 or 2-minute break. We will resume. We have more presentations coming our way. So in the meantime, again, we can take a short break. Let's resume at actually in 1 minute. We'll come back in 1 minute, everyone. So hang in there. Welcome back, everyone. We have more wonderful, amazing presentations from our exceptional student mentees who've been guided by very dedicated, passionate, and committed faculty mentors. So thank you all. Our next presentation is by Demonze Hunter and Dr. Malia Perez Martin. And the title of the research is Oral History of Ex-Felon Jury Disenfranchisement in California. All right, Demonze, take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Demonze Hunter. I'm a CRISJ scholar and a graduating senior undergraduate student majoring in sociology at California State University, Sacramento. Under the tutelage of Dr. Amalia Perez Martin, I conducted an oral history of ex felons in the jury box in California. This research fills a gap in our knowledge about ex felon experiences in the jury box after California's 2020 election and voter referendum restoring their right to vote, and the passage of a Senate Bill 310 restoring juror eligibility for ex felon that is no longer on parole in 2019. I used the non-probability, convenient, and purposive sampling technique to identify and recruit two participants from college and community-based organizations serving formerly incarcerated population. Both participants met the requirements such as non-parole status. They were registered voters. They actually been called and reported to the courthouse for jury duty, and also experience in sitting in the jury box and either served as a juror or was excluded from serving in the actual trial. I used qualitative, semi-structured interviews lasting approximately 1 hour each. Uh, and it was conducted in a private space chosen by each participant, in which I gave them informed consent and provided them with the option to stop their interviews at any time. The participants opted to answer all my questions, and I agreed to protect their identity using pseudonames in this presentation and as well in an article that I plan to file within the oral histories archives. This presentation provides a micro-analysis of participant interviews, focusing on their experiences as formerly incarcerated individuals, and the analysis was being framed in labeling theory and symbolic interactionism. My first interviewer, a summary, was Kim. She's a self-identified African American woman who was a social worker and served 25 years in prison for a felony conviction and started her reentry back into society on parole in 2013. Initially, she was ineligible to vote and disqualified from jury duty because of her felony status until after the laws changed in 2020. Inevitably, she did serve as an actual alternative juror in a trial in San Francisco County. As you can see from Kim's labeling theory chart, in her own words, in reference to the internalization of the felon label, Kim directly she directly gave that quote in response to her status uh, uh, to the judge that, hey, I'm an ex felon, like I can't be here. And that was her internalization of that label. And the stigma and exclusion from her when she initially went and tried to be a juror and they excluded her, she actually tried to avoid jury duty because of the criminal record, which is like the impact of this stigma that she didn't want to be identified. So she attempted to avoid it. In her distrust in the system, Kim explained her reluctance to serve on a jury. It was rooted in her own experiences as being convicted under the law that punished her for being a driver in a shooting that she didn't know that was going to initially take place. And the impact of her conviction, one way that she described it, or the context was that despite the fact that everyone knew that she wasn't involved in the crime, the criminal justice system still punished her. So that was the impact of that actual label. As you can see from Kim's symbolic interactionist chart, she had a transformative experience with an interaction with a judge. And the judge initially, her response was that was her very first time that she had talked to a judge and felt like she wasn't being judged. And in particular, when I was talking to her, she was filled with a lot of excitement. Uh, she was really amazed by how this judge treated her as just as another simple person. So that transformative interaction between her and the judge had led to uh, uh, her treatment during that time in jury selection, where no one the interaction between her and the judge was more in a private setting, and the judge took her away from everybody and reassured her, hey, like, you can do this. Your felony status don't matter. You're no longer on parole. You can serve your civic duty if you like. And she was really excited about that. Uh, in reference to her civic identity and voting, one of the big things that really reassured her in reference to reentry into society was the fact that she was able to vote made her feel more welcome in society. And that was a refreshing aspect for her. And it actually fueled her professional identity and self-worth, because she described her current situation or work as a social worker was that this was motivation for her to where that she would give back to her people that's similarly situated than she was. And one of the big things for Kim in reference to resisting stereotypes, it is through her work as a social worker that she seeks out and she find people that's similarly situated in what she were, and she resists those racial stereotypes, or either the way she described it was the ghettofied version. Like, she wasn't going to represent that no more. That was associated with her identity or the label of an ex-felon. And my next interviewer was Ray. He described himself as a white and Native American man. He is a director and a psychologist with over 20 years of experience working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals. And after serving those prison terms for felony convictions, he began his final reentry in society in 2015. Initially, he was barred, just like Kim, from voting due to his status as a felon, and he regained his eligibility after the laws changed in 2020 as well. And despite this, he was ultimately excluded from serving as a juror in Sacramento County. As you can see from Ray's labeling chart, one of the things with in regards to his persistence of the felon label, Ray had described how during the jury selection, his identity as a felon was reduced to that he was a criminal, despite his qualifications and rehabilitations. Ray was pretty much disappointed from the beginning. He didn't have any faith or trust in the system because of this label and the stigma that's attached to it. And one way that he described that about the institutionalized exclusion, he said, when you put in your on your jury card, it says that you been convicted of a felon, that everybody see him as a felon. So Ray, on top of the fact that he internalized the felon label, this actually fueled his interactions with people and his perceptions of how he thought that they saw him. And that led him to believe that initially that he was never going to get picked as a juror. And one of the things that Ray actually showed, he was really not anger, but just really taken aback because of the interactions between him and the defense attorney had brought out the fact that he was an ex-felon. And he said, like, out of all people, the defense actually targeted me and exposed me to be like this criminal, like he was nothing more than that. And the guy on trial was on trial because it was involved a shooting case, and Ray had talked about uh, uh, his social reactions to that, to where that he believed that they knew that he would be able to see through this defendant's BS if, in case the defendant was claiming a self defense, he accidentally shot someone. Ray believed that based on his experience itself, like he would be able to see through that, and this is why he felt that he was targeted by the defense attorney. And as you can see from Ray's symbolic interactionism chart, the shift in the social dynamics before inside the courtroom is one thing that the jurors actually start to move away from Ray once they got to talking about his felony conviction. And the whole dynamics in that courtroom just reaffirmed what Ray initially had felt with about the stigma of being labeled as a felon. And the unique thing about Ray was in regards to his identity and his expertise, he did not believe that uh, uh, that they could sway his opinion about whatever the defense claim would be during this trial. So that was one reason he felt that they excluded him. Uh, uh, he never thought that the fact that they would see him as a fair and a fair and impartial juror. And one way in which Ray, in regards to symbolic interactionism, where Ray reclaimed his identity in spite of the label, he's a director of Project Rebound and that served formerly incarcerated students. And that one of the big things for him was just the working with that population in that environment. That's where his identity being reclaimed at. He's actively involved in that community as well. So a comparative analysis between Ray and Kim is both Kim and Ray share experiences in long-term incarceration, face the stigma of being labeled as felons, and struggled with systemic barriers to voting and juror duty. Also, they share transformative interactions by actively resisting societal stereotypes and redefining their identities through professional and civic roles. However, Kim and Ray differ in their disillusionment with the justice system. Hers was rooted in the perception of being unjustly convicted, while his distrust stemmed from the exclusionary practice in the jury selection. Also, they differ as well in the transformative interactions. Hers was with the judge and serving as a juror despite her felony status, while his was with the defense attorney exposing his felony status, causing disapproval by felon jurors and exclusion from serving as a juror. As well, they differ in the center of their professional identity. Hers is rooted in social work, while his is through the academic background in psychology and a role as a director. In conclusion, and the suggestions regarding this research, Kim and Ray experiences illustrate how labels can constrain opportunities and shape self perception, particularly when reinforced by legal and social systems. Social interactions, especially those that defy expectations, can disrupt internalized stigma and open pathways to new identities. Agency and resistance play a crucial role in how individuals navigate and sometimes transcend the labels imposed on them. This study suggests a micro sociological forces and the inherent conflict between the powerful and the powerless, and the structural function of felony status in maintaining values and norms in our society, which I will expound on in my final article before filing this study with the Oral History Archives. And thank you very much. And again, I appreciate everybody, Dr. Ramirez, for putting on this presentation as well for all of the participants. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you, Demonze. Absolutely. Another just amazing presentation. I'm looking forward to the final article that you list on your PowerPoint. And thank you so much again to the faculty mentor, Dr. Amalia Perez Martin. Thank you so much for supporting our student mentees. All right. We have one last presentation, and the presentation, last but not least, is by Christopher Nunez and Dr. Heidi Sarabia. And the title of the presentation is Conexiones, Relaciones y Colaboraciones, which means connections, relationships, and collaborations. How first generation Latinx students find their academic home in sociology. Take it away.
Okay. Perfect. So, as Professor Elliot just said, my presentation is Conexiones, Relaciones y Colaboraciones, how first generation Latino students find their academic home in sociology. Me and Dr. Sarabia worked on this together, and we thought that it was super important that our title was in Spanish, just because that's kind of what we're focusing on. We're focusing on first generation Latinos. We did a survey, so we did an interview. So for the outline, we're going to talk about the motivation, why we chose to do this, our research question, some of the literature we used, our methods. We're going to outline our findings, and then we're going to go over the conexiones, las relaciones, our collaboration. So connections, the relationships, and the collaborations, our conclusion, and then our information. So our main motivation is why major in sociology. So my main question overall before we specified was, why are people choosing the majors that they're choosing? I kind of looked at my own experience and the experience of my peers around me, and why it was so difficult for many of us to choose what the major that we were choosing. When I started my freshman year, I would ask people, "What is your major?" And the most common response I got was, "I'm undeclared. I don't know yet. I'm undeclared because I think I want to switch majors, or I have this major, but I want to switch it later on." So that was the main motivation for my study. And then our main research question after, studying was, how and why do Latinx or first generation students major in sociology? Sociology is my major, so that's why I had a little bit more motivation to study this, just because it's my discipline. So for the literature, I chose four main articles and review. They're peer-reviewed articles that I wanted to focus on. So the first one was Connecting on Campus, which explores how different interactions predict thriving for college students. So this talks about students of color navigating campus in comparison to white students, right? The second one is How Family Determine Competition Within College Campus. So this talks a little bit about the family background and how family influences college students. So when we talk about that, it's both economic, and we're also talking about social factors of the family, right? So then we have the third, which is college students' adjustment. So the role of parent college student expectation when going to college. So the influence of parents on the adjustment of college and other areas. And then a quote that I chose from this article, which I thought was important to highlight, was, as college students often set goals based on the perceptions of their parents' expectations, discrepancies between college students and their parents' expectations may be related to their adjustment. I'm going to be talking a little bit about this, about how our parents' expectations really influence how we are in college and how that influences the majors that we choose as college students. And then I'm going to, last but not least, we're going to be talking about beyond undocumented, which is differences in the mental health of Latinx students, undocumented college students, which is a Latino studies, just because this is such an important thing. Often Latino parents come, they immigrate into this new country, into this new world. And, back when they were home, they didn't know about what was anxiety, what is depression, what is, peer pressure, all of these things. To them, it's not really a thing. They don't have the words to describe that. Their parents were more like, hey, if you have any of these feelings, it doesn't really matter. You need to work and you need to do this thing to push yourself forward. So for the methods, we did an in-depth survey. We did one interview of a student alumni from Sacramento State. Thank you, Dr. Sarabia, because she was the one that was able to get that connection for me. So we're going to be talking about the conexiones, the relationships, and the colaboraciones. So first, the connections. I want to focus on a quote that was said by the student alumni. He said, "I ended up noticing that in that experiences that if I was, or sorry, hold on. I ended up noticing in that experience that if it was learning things that were affecting me at a personal level, I was always engaged. And it made my studying in my academics and my ability to learn easier because I was connecting with what I was learning to something in my life." So when I was doing this interview, we were asking a lot of questions, and what we realized about this interviewee was that when they were learning things in their classes that related to them, it was easier for them to pay attention and engage. So this student was also an immigrant. They were here on DACA status. So when they were learning about that in their classes, it made them engage easier to the subjects that they were learning. So here's a little timeline of this student. So they started here at Sacramento State and they started as an engineering major, right? So this was something that their family understood and was proud of. So when we talk about this thing with Latino parents, right, there's certain things that they understand and certain things that they don't understand. Things as here's a quote that he said. He said, "For my family, you're either a doctor or a lawyer, and that's it." So there's these things that to his parents, this is something that they understood a career as a doctor, as a career as a lawyer. Those are things that get you money, right? They're things that make you successful in the eyes of their family. So when he chose engineering, it was something that the family understood and was proud of. This individual ended up not liking engineering too much. It was too much math, according to them. And so they switched to construction management. When we were interviewing, he said that this was something that he wanted to do because although it wasn't engineering, it was something that he could use to relate to his parents. When he had come to college, it was this sort of separation from his family. He says that he was a super tight knit family, right? Him and his family were super close. So when he left for college, it was a bit of a separation. His parents actually sent him and forced him to apply to Sacramento State because they wanted him to be far enough from home that he was away from community gang violence in the Hispanic community, but was still close enough to come back and be with his parents. So he chose construction management as a connection to his father. He said that when he would go home and talk to his dad, it was something that they could relate about. It was that connection to his father. However, construction management also did not end up working for this individual, and so he chose psychology. This was actually influenced by a fraternity brother of his. They were in the same frat, and he encouraged him, "Hey, psychology is actually a pretty easy major. I think you'll do great." Psychology ended up also not working, and so he ended up switching over to sociology. The reason that he ended up switching over to sociology was that he was actually put on academic probation due to his grades, and sociology was the only major that was open to him taking the amount of units that he needed in order to graduate. He ended up saying that this was actually the best thing that could happen because he ended up loving sociology and it was something that he majored in, he got his bachelor's in, and then later went and pursued his PhD in sociology. So for the relaciones, he said, I could relate with Professor Barajas, who's actually here. So Professor Barajas, we're talking about you in his courses. Like, I'm like, oh my God, he's a farm worker. Like I am. So talking about those stories, it gave me a lot of confidence. I'm like, oh, if someone from the fields that worked in the fields can do it, so can I. So this actually talks a little, I'll talk a little bit more about this in my slide, but those connections to the people in our college and our peer connections, our, connections with our professors are actually really important when influencing our connections. So this actually gets me back to right here when we talk about family, the adjustment. So we talk about parents, but we also need to talk about our peer connections and our connections to our professors. So one thing he talked about was the confidence, right? So when you're connecting on campus, right, you see how white students, in comparison to people of color, aren't as knowledgeable about the college experience because they usually and typically have parents who did not go to college, right? So some of the things that he talked about that he was completely unaware of before going to college was mentoring, office hours, asking questions, a syllabus, study resource, and school sources. So, because his parents had never gone to college and he was the first one to go to college, he didn't know what office hours were. He didn't know that he could go into these office hours and talk to his professors. When he was handed a syllabus for the first time, it was the first time he had ever seen a syllabus. Was seeing all these different things and he was like, what is this, right? And so, right here, I have some graphs that show that white is the majority of people enrolled in colleges. Well, this first graph shows 2011, and here we have 2020. And while we see that Hispanic has grown by a substantial amount, we still see that white is definitely the majority, right? So we have white people who have, this generational power, right? Their parents have typically gone to college. They have knowledge of college, how to apply to colleges, how to get FAFSA financial aid, right? Whereas students whose parents did not go to college don't have any of this knowledge, right? They're kind of going in not knowing anything, right? So when he started connecting with mentors, he's talking a little bit about Professor Barajas and stuff. It was this new experience to him because he really didn't know that that was something that you could do. This second graph right here is a little bit older, but I think it still gives a great insight into what I'm discussing. So we see here, this is the blue is below high school level, so it's educational levels, right? We have yellow, which is high school, some college or associates, and then we have our green, which is bachelor's and higher. We see right here in the white section that they have the highest amount of bachelor's or higher, and then the least amount of below high school. Whereas if we compare it to Hispanic right over here, which is what we'll be talking about, but we can also see other people of color right here. Hispanics have the highest amount of below high school level, and it seems to be pretty in tied with Black and African American individuals, as well as American Indian and Alaskan Native for bachelor's or higher. So we just see that here the graphs are connecting to one another. We see how white, has the highest enrollment and also the highest achievement. These people get bachelors, they get degrees, they have careers that, are within academia. So they just have more knowledge in general. So for the colaboraciones, I think when I was in sociology, the fact that were many of my colleagues and students that were taking these courses as well. We were all learning about all these systems. We were all a little bit more open-minded and learning from each other. So I have friends in disciplines such as engineering, computer science, and one of the biggest things that I hear, which is so crazy because I think the sociology just has a really great group, is that everyone's super competitive and they want to see you fail, which when I learned that was extremely surprising because I've made a lot of connections in the sociology department. And as we see here in the quote, so did this individual. And it's very true, in sociology, I think a lot of us are open minded and we want to see each other succeed. We learn about all these disparities, all of these oppressions that keep people of color and people in different groups down, right? We have like sexual orientation, race obviously plays a big role, gender. And so we want to see our peers succeed. But when you go to a discipline such as engineering and computer science, it's very competitive. So I think this quote just displays why sociology is such a great major to choose, right? So when we're talking about colaboraciones, I put the connections that he had with Professor Manuel Barajas, and he also talks about internships, right? And then we have our connections with our peers, which when he talks about is fraternity brothers. So connections in college are super important when we are going into this new, system, which is the college system, when our parents didn't have that opportunity, right? So making sure that we're connecting with professors, connecting with peers was super important. And as I stated earlier, he didn't really know about these items. He didn't know about office hours. He didn't know that you could talk to your professors like that. So just making those aware, and within sociology is just really important. So that is our conclusion. I talked a little bit about the connections, the relationships, and the collaborations that happen within college and why those are so important, especially when it comes to undocumented individuals and the Latino community. So these are my references, and thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Christopher. Another powerful and amazing presentation. So we've actually reached, and also thank you to Dr. Heidi Saravia for working with Christopher Nunez. Again, powerful analysis. So we've reached actually the end of our conference. We now have a Q&A session, question and answer session. So let's see. If there are any questions, comments for any of our presenters, please raise your hand and turn on your camera and your mic. Any questions or comments for our presenters? Hey, I'm like, I see some applause signs. Any questions or comments? Manuel?
No, thank you. I really enjoyed all the presentations. I connected with all of them. They were beautiful, amazing, powerful, and so I'm just happy to be here with you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Manuel, for that comment. All right. So are there any questions? Any questions or other comments for our presenters? Yes, Heidi. I see a question from Heidi.
More like a comment. So this project that Chris was presenting on, it's part of a larger project undertaken in the sociology department. And one of the collaborators is here, Deborah Welkley. There's also Amy Liu and Amanda Shigihara. And we have been doing a survey with alumni, and we conducted the first interview with Chris. And so Chris was presenting on that interview. And as he said, it was very insightful as to sort of how these Latino alumni kind of went and chose sociology as a major. So, yeah, thank you to all the collaborators, and thank you, Chris, for doing the first presentation on this, project. Just exciting stuff, and more to come. So, thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, I remember talking to Chris last semester about his research interests and major choice. There's very little, not enough research on this topic. So thank you to, Chris and the Department of Sociology and the faculty. I see more hands raised. Mary.
Yes, great job to the presenters. I actually had a question for all three of you, the same question. Your research was very great, and I was wondering if there anything in your research that you wish you could have done or how you would like to expand this research for the future.
Excellent. Excellent question.
Is it okay if I answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. So as Dr. Sarabia said, this is an ongoing, research project that they're doing in the sociology department. So with this presenter, we actually did have a second interview planned, but unfortunately, it was unable to happen just due to business, like a schedule with the interviewee. And so that's something that I wish, I could have worked more on. I thought the first interview was great and I got a lot of information, but I think it could have definitely expanded on some of the topics I talked about within that second interview. So I just wish maybe more time was allotted and we could maybe plan something. I know everything gets busy, we all have different schedules, so it's not like I'm trying to blame anyone, but it would have been great if, I would have been able to do that second interview because I could have expanded on some topics. But yeah, great question. Thank you for asking.
Demonze, want to take a
Yeah, one things that because the new laws in California had just got to a place where they restored ex-felon rights to vote. And one of the big challenges that I noticed in my research is that there's no way, like no matter whatever research is being done on that population, because you have to use convenient samples or snowball sampling methods, you cannot make generalizations about the larger population. And it's unfortunate because as of recently, I believe it's only one state that do not have any restrictions on ex-felon juror eligibility. But there are California became the 12th state in 2019 to expand that vote, or not expand it, to restore that vote. However, there's no way to track what's going on the ground as far as what is the overall impact in the larger population. And it's because there's no sampling frame to draw a random sample to make those generalizations about the larger population, which kind of like reinforced the status quo. And it was one of the reasons why I said that I will be expounding on conflict theory and functionalism in reference to that label as a felony status, because in practice, what's going on is not what's being done theoretically. Everybody had a right to vote. Everybody can participate if they non-parole. However, courts has been found in other studies to disseminate false information regarding juror eligibility. So a lot of people that have the right to vote is unaware of because of that misinformation. And that's one of the things that I've been really, really looking at. And my idea is to create a research panel of ex-felons the way that the General Social Survey and the Pew Research Center does that for the larger U.S. adult population, because it's hard to get anybody to do surveys. But if it's good for them to create those research panels and qualify and call them random samples, then it can be done for all marginalized communities, whether it's undocumented immigrants, felon status, or whatever it is, because those particular population historically always lived in the shadows and is not as easily identifiable for anybody that's willing to do research on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Demonze. And Amalia, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing conversation between the monks and I, where to go. And you heard him. I mean, he has a clear, agenda there. But we have been also talking, like a research panel is, yeah, I think, and I see, the utility and importance of that. But I don't want him to renounce to, keep collecting lived experiences, and oral histories, because here we are all, sociologists, and if you are not sociologist, you even know, the importance of rich data that we don't necessarily, get when you have a survey, quantitative data. And I think he has been doing it at the same time. He didn't mention it, but this is the qualitative side of a larger study. He had quantitative data already on this related topic. So I think he has a powerful project here with these two sides, and it can end up being a mixed method research project. So I think it's important to keep working on both sides. And this is also because he didn't mention, but we admitted the Monza to be part of the new cohort of master's students in sociology. So I hope we can keep working on these and the two sides of that project. And then in the theoretical side, and I will be teaching him theory, next semester. So in the theoretical side, we have been talking a lot on social death, and how this it could be also placed as part of a larger story about social death, and the ways in which people cope with it, even when the law is saying there are ways to combat that and what happened in practice, and then go beyond the micro theoretical analysis of labeling theory, and interactionism, to think more about as he said, conflict theory, power relations. I think it's so interesting what he got already, two contrasting stories. And you can make, you can even introduce an intersectional analysis here and bring class, gender, and race, because these are two different, races here, two different genders, and they have different interactions. And then you can even talk about the judge as in the situation of power in which the judge is, and then the defender, the defense attorney, and how the power differential between a judge and an attorney can play it out here. So there is a lot, and he only got two oral history. So if you expand that, I think it would be amazing. So yeah.
Amazing. I want to take a quick thank you, Amalia, for sharing those insights. A really quick break and ask if we can take a group picture, because some of the folks here have to leave. Before we leave, before anyone leaves, can you please turn on your cameras, everyone, so we can take a group photo.
Make sure you get my plants.
I see the plants. They will come out in the picture. All right, we have a few more folks. Mona, is that you, Mary Williams, or is that somebody else? Williams?
Oh, yes,
Arlen?
that was my phone.
Okay. Arlen? Mona? Okay, well, maybe they're camera shy. All right. So, Chris, can you put your hand down for a second? I see your hand. Okay, there you go. All right. Pónganse lippy sticky. Just kidding. Okay, so to the count of 3, we will take a group picture. Smile for the camera. 1, 2, 3. All right, hold on. Let's see. I'm going to take another picture. Couple more. One more. Hold on for a sec. All right. 1, 2, 3. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So we're taking some pictures. Thank you. I know folks may have to leave. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. So let's continue the Q&A. Diana, I see your hand, and also Diana, let's start with you.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Deanna. I'm a graduate student at Cal State LA. I was just invited to come and see, but anyhow, I had a comment for Desmond. So I know that you were mentioning that you do the oral histories with these two people who were recently incarcerated. I'm not sure if you know of the program called Project Rebound at Cal State LA. Maybe you can reach out with them and see if they're open to the idea of having a conference. I know that they like to do events for their Project Rebound that they have on campus. I think that would be a really good opportunity for you to bring awareness to the issues that are happening onto campus, because I know that they do a lot of work outside of campus, but they don't really bring the work to campus unless it's like graduation ceremonies or they're talking about their project. But if you probably bring up the idea of a conference, that probably could be something that you could begin to work on. And I'd be more than happy to help you with that too if you ever need the help, because, that's another campus. So, yeah, thank you. Love the presentation.
Thank
No,
you.
definitely, Diana. I'm actually a member of Project Rebound, but on the quantitative aspect, I had got at least about 170 participants in the survey, which is a different research. However, that's the exact my sentiments is the same as yours, and I definitely would love to connect with you because like I mentioned earlier, my overall idea is to create that research panel. So the more people that I can network with, the more people that we can have these conversations with, uh, the more probability of it becoming a reality. Because it wouldn't just be for my research; it would be for anybody willing to do research on that population can request the demographics they're looking for to be a representative sample so they can make generalizations, and that would be for anybody. So it wouldn't just be for me, and that's a way that we can draw random samples and get past the convenient sample or things like that, especially when we're talking about institutional structures, because without it, one thing that I've been noticing in the literature a lot, they always say, for instance, okay, in the limitations section, oh, that's only limited to your participants. When in reality, the causative factors there is from a on a micro level and not a micro level, a macro level and not a micro level. So definitely, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna put my information in the chat, and then I am a networker. And thanks you.
He is a wonderful networker. Thank you, Demonze. And gracias. Thank you, Diana, for that comment. All right, we have another question or comment from Anita. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Oh, okay, there you
You
go.
are. There you
I
go.
just have a comment. Everyone did such a great job, and I'm very impressed by everyone's presentation. My comment, please go out and support Three Sisters Gardens. They're doing amazing work here in Sacramento. They're a nonprofit organization, and Alfred is so amazing. He is giving back to the community in more ways than you can ever imagine. All you gotta do is go to their website, fill out a couple of, a couple little form, and then just go out there and meet him. And he's so open to so many things, school projects, anything that has to do with institutions as far as, universities and stuff like that, and learning opportunities. And there's also an Indigenous festival coming up June 14th here in West Sacramento. I'll be there cooking all the farm's food up, the vegetables that are grown. So, yeah, just check them out. Alfred Melbourne, Three Sisters Gardens, and they will reply very quickly to you. And thank you so much for everyone's time and dedication.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? I had a quick question, since we're talking about methodology I wanted to ask a question to Demonze. So, we know, right? That quantitative research, quantitative methods, does offer, a lot of benefits, as you mentioned, generalizability. Can you tell us what some of the benefits you found using the qualitative approach, like oral history? What did you get from the oral histories that you could not have gotten from, say, just strictly survey methods? Like, what are some of the insights you were able to glean from your oral
One,
history analysis?
I'm glad you asked that question because I had two different contrasting perceptions, attitudes, and sentiments towards the system. And one thing that you cannot get from quantitative analysis is those intonations when when they talking and you hear excitement in their voice, or when they talking and you hear like uh 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 a mood of distrust or sadness, or when you listening to them talk about their perceptions, like for instance with Kim with that judge, the interactions between her and that judge. The contrasted thing is when Ray was being questioned in open court, the the uh the defense attorney had this dialogue between him and Ray in front of everybody. The dialogue between Kim and the judge was private. It wasn't in front of all the jurors. The judge had the tact and the humanity to bring her to the side because she was mindful, or I'm assuming that she was mindful of that stigma that's attached to the felony status. And when she did bring her over there to the side and they was talking, it was like light bulbs was going off in her head, to where that, hey, I am really am a citizen. Like I really can, if a judge is treating me like this, I can really make a successful stab at reentry and coming back into society, because she didn't have a criminal history other than the fact that somebody used her because she had a car and she was unaware that a crime was going on, and she got convicted uh, uh, and served 20 something years in prison because she was a driver in a car that everybody knew she wasn't involved in the crime, but they wanted her to become a witness against her friend that she did know. And because of her silence, she ended up doing 25 years for what everybody knew she didn't have anything to do with. So her distrust in that system throughout that interview, you would never be able to capture that in a survey, because there's no way to ask those questions and those follow up. And when you see people responses, you can get clarifications and dig a little bit deeper and to get to the essence of what's really going on in these people's lived experiences. So that was like, I was amazed by it. Because like I said, me myself, I am a Project Rebound member. I served 35 years in prison, was released June 1st of 2023. And from where I was when I first got out, I had no idea about technology and a bunch of things. And to where I'm at today, less than 2 years, I'm graduating and I've already been accepted into the master's program. So to me, what I seen with Kim was just affirmations after affirmations, like, hey, you can do these things. And it's in spite of the label, because those labels are real. The stigma is real. And Ray is a good example of how real it is, because his general idea disposition was, well, even when he heard about voting rights, to him, he was like, ha, you're right. They would never, even if they give it to us, it would never count for nothing. And even if they went to the jury, they would never let us be on the jury. Or he just a total distrust. And the unique thing about him, his contact with the criminal justice system didn't come until he was in his late 20s, early 30s. So all that time up until that point, he was a licensed gun carrier. He was a business owner. Uh, uh, And that was some of the things that he felt that he should have been judged on when the defense attorney was questioning him, but then they focused more on the criminal aspect.
Thank you, Demonze, for sharing those insights. All right, so we're coming close to the end of the conference. Any other concluding questions or comments from the audience? Anything our presenters want to share? Anything else with us?
That would be nice. A final reflection from the presenters. Your presentations were amazing. They were
Thank you, Anita.
illuminating. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just like to talk, but um, I want to just give a special thank you to my mentor, obviously, Dr. Sarabia. She's just been so helpful since I met her. I met her last year when we did research together, so you've just been so great. Love working with you. And then another great Professor Manuel Barajas had you in my class too. And hearing a presenter talk about you was just so great because I had that same experience with you. I was like, I love this class. I know you teach. I'm taking another class with you next semester too. So all your immigration studies classes are always awesome because you're informed, and then you also have that lived experience too, right? That I'm personally don't really have that lived experience. I'm like second generation Latino, but I have family members who are living through that first generation. They're coming. So just having a professor who actually lived that, instead of, sorry, don't hate me, but like a white professor who's teaching me these things is like really great just because I know it's coming from someone with that lived experience. So it was great. Demonze, loved your presentation. Lucky you got to work with Dr. Martin. So everyone's just great. Love everybody.
Thank you, Chris. Any other presenter? I'm also reading the chat and the chat. Thank you all for the comments in the chat. Presenter?
I just wanted to say thank you to the CRISJ program. I really learned a lot in this program. You couldn't have paired me with such a great mentor, a better mentor. Thank you very much to Dr. Milana. I know she had to go, but this program allows us to give a voice to people that are silent and underrepresented minorities and communities. And thank you for allowing us to help bridge the gap into our research and our part as scholars and those who identify with the various communities mentioned.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for those beautiful words. And Anita, Erica, any concluding thoughts, reflections?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramirez, and thank you, Dr. B.
Thank you.
I appreciate you so much, both of you so much, and I appreciate everyone who presented today. I'm just saying, you guys are so remarkable and amazing, and good luck to your future endeavors, and keep doing it. You guys are some major trailblazers, seriously.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, kind of reiterate what Mary said. Like, I feel like all of the mentors were paired perfectly well with all the students, and so this has just been a very successful program. And even last semester, when we would all have our meetings, it was just very focused and helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. All right, so thank you everyone for participating in today's conference. Before we call it a day, I want to give a shout out to all of the faculty who volunteered, to work with us. We could not exist. We could not exist as a program without our faculty mentors. So not every student was able to present today, so we don't see all students and their mentors here today. But again, I want to give a shout out to the mentors who volunteered. This is all based on all volunteer work. Again, we cannot do it without your support. We have Dr. Itzela Cebes Asaura, Dr. Lorena Camargo Gonzalez, Dr. Amalia Perez Martin, Dr. Mary Brunig, Dr. Manuel Barrantes, Dr. Netika Sharma, Dr. Heidi Sarabia, Professor Jason Kion Tena Encarnacion, Dr. Vanessa Guzman, Dr. Maria Vargas, and Dr. Ahmed Correa. Thank you all. Thank you also to our students. Again, not all of our students were able to participate, but I want to give a shout out as well to our students with whom I met this previous semester and some of whom are here today. These include Grecia Gomez Rios, Miranda Hernandez Teodoro, Demonze Hunter, Anita Kirk, Summer Lemendeji, V. Mejia, Christopher Nunez, Karina Payton, Erica Scholes, and Menet Topete. Thank you all. I will see you at graduations, and we will continue this mentoring program in years to come, I hope. So